got us another heavy duty viewer mill delivery that required the big Dodge to get. We got a 4-jaw chuck for the Monarch lathe. Yeah, I mentioned in one of my previous videos that the 4-jaw on the Monarch was getting pretty well worn. The screws in the jaws were getting wore out in it, so I took it off. I put the other Cushman that I got from Tom Lipton on it, and one of my viewers decided they wanted to send me one. This is one that he found and asked me would I be able to use it. So it checks out. From what I see, it's a direct replacement for the chuck that's on the lathe now. It is a Cushman. It's a 15-inch. So I'm going to go ahead and get it unloaded and get it inside, and we'll take a look at it and see if it's a good chuck. Hopefully it is, and we'll see about getting her cleaned up, mounted on the machine. So there's our first look at the 4-jaw, and I went ahead and pulled one of the jaws out. Just trying to do a little bit of inspection. So I want to go ahead and give a mention to who sent this to me. This was given to me by Jack Inman from Nashville, Tennessee. He's one of the viewers of the channel, and this is a way that he wanted to contribute to what's going on around here. And Jack, I can't thank you enough, man. This is just totally awesome, man. I know this was this is not cheap, and the shipping is not cheap, but Jack insisted that he found this on eBay, and it was purchased from a seller in Oxford, Pennsylvania, I believe. So that's where the chuck come from, and I don't know anything else about it besides that. So giving it a look here, it is a genuine Cushman chuck. You can see it inscribed inside the jaw right there, inside the slot, Cushman, and it's got it on the tag as well right there. Hartford, Connecticut, and it's stamped 15, and it's got a serial number. So there's a look at the inside of the jaw here, and then of course you got your screw. And I haven't taken the other ones out, but I've looked at the ends of the other ones, and they all look like they're in good shape. So I think this is going to be a good chuck right here. Now how flat the jaws are here, I don't really know. That's a common thing with old chucks and well-used chucks. They start bell mouthing. You do a lot of chucking out here, so eventually over the years they start getting worn. And that one looks like it has been used out here on the end. It looks like the serrations are a little bit more smaller on this end than they are on that end, but that's okay. That's fine. We're gonna do a cleanup of this chuck. You can kind of see in here, it's got some good color to it, and then out here is where it's lived it, through the elements of the weather and whatnot. So I'm not really sure exactly the approach I'm going to use yet for cleaning it up, but I am thinking about possibly trying some evapor rust on it. These are easily soaked. We can do that. I'd like to try one and see how it reacts. I don't want to lose the ground shiny finish, so I'll try one and see what it does probably. And then maybe on the chuck I'll do the rag technique where you soak the rags in the evapor rust and you lay it on there, and then you cover it up with plastic to keep the the evapor rust from evaporating into the atmosphere. So we'll give it a shot and see. I want to try that method first before we do any kind of abrasives on it. So I will show you guys along the way on how this progresses. And once again, thank you very much, Jack Inman. I really appreciate this. This means a whole lot to me, more than I can tell you. It really means a lot. So we're gonna do you right. We're gonna get this thing cleaned up, and we're gonna put it on the Monarch and use it. So I'm going to go ahead and try the soak in the evapor rust overnight for the first jaw that you see me remove. And I'm using my old school Tupperware right here, the old pickle pickle Tupperware. Perfect for that jaw. So this stuff is pretty well spent. I think it's still working because the last cutters that I cleaned, it was working. So I'm going to try it before I go out and get another gallon. So I really like this thing because it's kind of like a parts cleaner. You know, you can sort of got like a little basket. So there's the jaw. I just put it in there. It hadn't been soaking yet. And we're gonna let it soak for 24 hours. Whenever I get home from work tomorrow, I'll check it out and see what it looks like. Alright, so we're out here doing the Sunday barbecue, and I wanted to go ahead and do a little bit more work on the new 4-jaw chuck here. So as I showed you, we were going to soak this one jaw in Evaporust and see how it does. So what I have come to the conclusion is that this Evaporust I've been using is completely spent. It is no longer working. It worked very, very slightly, but it didn't really do much. You can still see rust on it right there on this part of the jaw. And I used that 1 gallon of Evaporust to do all those cutters in the shop, and just a lot of different things I've already cleaned with it, so it's pretty well gone. So what I did, we're gonna dump this out. I went ahead and bought another gallon of Evaporust, and I dumped this out. And what was really interesting, I dumped this pan out, and this is what I did all the cleaning of the cutters. There was probably a 1/2-inch layer of just gook in the bottom of this, and I think it was the oil and the grease and Cosmoline and protective coatings that were on some of those cutters. It was just layered in the bottom like clay, and I had to just wipe it out of there and clean it. So we're going to start fresh. I've showed this before. I'm not getting anything out of this. It's just a good product to use. Evaporust, I get mine at O'Reilly's Auto Parts, and I pay $22.99 for a gallon of it. I just went and got it. So we're going to go ahead, and you can see the jaws here. I brought them out so you should be able to see them really good in the sunlight out here. They're not too bad, and they could easily be cleaned up by hand, which we'll probably do a polish on them later. There's a little more rust on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and lay these down in here like so. Alright, and we'll go ahead and pour our Evaporust in there till it just covers them up. And then I always save this stuff. Yeah, I keep it in this pan. I keep aluminum foil over it so it doesn't evaporate out. And this is just my go-to pan for using the Evaporust. It's going to use most of it here. And it just covered it up, so probably about that much left in here. I'll just leave it in there. And since this is a fresh batch, I'll monitor this today and see how we're doing later on in the day after a few hours, but most likely we're just going to let this run or let it clean overnight into tomorrow. Okay, so we let the jaw soak in that Evaporust for at least 6 hours. I wasn't really watching the clock, but I know it was most of the day, and it's about 6 o'clock now in the evening. And I'm out here messing around, still watching my barbecue outside, and I went ahead and pulled them out because I thought that they were plenty soaked long enough. So here's one that I just polished up with Scotch-Brite, this gray Scotch-Brite right here. And in the serrations, I did go over to the wire brush, the wire wheel, and very lightly use that to clean these grooves out, and also right here. But the rest of it, I actually polished by hand with the Scotch-Brite. And the jaws turn out really nice. They're looking really good. I still got to clean these threads out just a little bit, just blow them out. Maybe hit them with a little stainless steel wire brush like that right there. But you can see, you can kind of compare. These are still wet. I just took them out, and it did take the rust off of them, but it just leaves a little bit of the black residue that you have to polish out. So that's just the difference between the two. So doing pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and rinse these off and get that stuff off of them and dry them. and we'll be continuing to polish them. So over here we've got the chuck, and I have taken a rag and soaked it, and I've got it laid on one spot right here. So I'm gonna see how this does. I'm gonna leave it like this overnight. We got the plastic on it so it doesn't evaporate the the moisture out of the rag there. And then we'll compare it and we'll see what it looks like with the evapor rust side, and the dirty side still. So we'll bring you back. So it's been a day, probably a little more than 24 hours since I laid a rag on this chuck here soaked with that evapor rust, and you can see it's done something. It looks like rust has come through the rag. I only put it on one section because I wanted to be able to compare it and see what's happening here. Covered up with this plastic. This is all I could really find that was convenient. Come off my my charcoal bags, but I think it'll work. Okay, it's still damp, so I guess it did its job. Let's see what's going on here. It's really kind of grown to it in a few places. Looks like it's taken some rust there. Let me grab another rag here and okay. Well, it's doing its job. It's getting the, you can see where the rag was laid right across here. It's doing its job though, and it's getting rid of the rust. You just have to go behind it and do some polishing on it, which I'll do. You take some gray Scotch-Brite and do a hand buff on it like this. And really start to bring out the nice polish in the metal. There'll be a lot of hand work involved with this right here, but definitely worth it. This is a nice chuck. Everything looks like it's in good shape. I'll have to do some cleaning real good down in here in these slotted areas with probably use some of the more burgundy colored Scotch-Brite to clean these out. So I'll go ahead and do some more of the rust treatment on this and lay the rags. I'll cover it up with the rags and try to remove some of this rust, and it will make the process a little easier whenever you go to do your final polish in there. So I'll bring you back whenever I got some more to show you. I went ahead and decided to grab one of my blue shop rags. I've got a bag full of these, and I went ahead and soaked it. And we're going to try this instead of the blue, the little thin paper towel rags. I'm going to go ahead and stretch that over. We're going to cover that up good. I'll go ahead and try to stick the sides a little bit. I figured I'd try to get the face good like this. And then once we do that, I can stand it up and take a couple days and get like half of it on the OD. So, all right, we're gonna cover it back up with this plastic that I got. And I got two of them, so I'm just utilizing both of these pieces that I got right here. All right, so I'll show you what this looks like in a day. Okay, so it's been a day since we put the rag on here. Let's go ahead and pull it off and see what it looks like, what it's done. Definitely tries to stick to it. Left like a pattern of the fabric on here. I don't know if this rag was the best choice. You can see that it's got places that it didn't actually get it very well just because of the coarseness of the weave and the fabric. I didn't even think about that. Well, I guess I can go ahead and do it again. I'll probably go back to the regular blue, the little throwaway shop rags, little shop towels, and I'll go ahead and do this again and let it sit again overnight. I got another little job down there that we can get started on anyway, so we'll I'll show you what I'm going to do. I got my pan right there. We got the pan right here with the evaporust. I'm just dipping these in there. Leave them kind of wet. I'm going to make sure that it's down good. And I'll just keep doing that until it's all covered up, all right? And we'll come right back tomorrow and see what it looks like. So it's been 24 hours since we put the little shop rags on there, so let's go ahead and unwrap her. Interesting what it looks like. I actually want to get a picture of this real quick with my phone to document it. They're still damp. Interesting how the rust just seems to be forming in little blobs, little puddles on the rags there. Well, all I can say is that it's getting the rust off. Give it a little wipe and it kind of gets rid of some of the black. But I've got plenty of hand work to be done, to be doing on this. And I'm getting to the point where I'm tired of trying this and just waiting for it to work too. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start doing some hand polishing on it. I'm just going to use some Scotch-Brite. I might experiment with it. I want it to look good. You know, this is a new chuck that was given to me, and typically these kind of things, they just they just sit in your shop forever, and they start getting dark and dirty and rusty, and you don't really think about it. You just use them. But I wanted to put a little bit of elbow grease into this to try to polish it up some, make it look good, and then put it over on the machine and put it to use. So I'm going to go ahead and spend a little time with it this evening, and we'll do some buffing. This gray Scotch-Brite's doing pretty good right there. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's doing pretty good right there. So I'm going to go ahead and work it a little bit, and I'll show you a couple clips here and there of the progress, and let's get this thing cleaned up. So there's what I've got done so far. We got one little corner of it finished off. I just wanted to show you the difference, you know, what it's going to look like, and compare it to what's on there now. So I'm using 3 courses of the Scotch-Brite. This is the really coarse, and then this is the medium, and then we've got the fine. And I'm using the coarse down in the T-slots, and also down here on the sides, you know, these slots here, and then on the top I'm hitting it with this medium Scotch-Brite and giving it a lot of elbow grease, and then I'm coming over it with the gray and really trying to polish it in some. And I'll do some more polishing on this too. With I know I'm gonna go with some metal polish once I get it all clean, and try to give it a little bit more sheen and a little bit of a protective coating on there. But for now, I'm just going to keep going over the top. I've got a lot of it to do. There's a lot of cleaning to be done, but it's really looking good. So I went ahead and finished the top side of it, and the slots in here and the T-slots pretty well. Probably going to go back over it again with some fine, the fine Scotch-Brite. This is actually just finished with coarse and medium. And I did go ahead and hook up my wire brush to the new DeWalt grinder there, just to get in these V-grooves. They were filled with a lot of trash, dust and dirt and grease, that kind of stuff, as all of them always are. So I just used that to went in there and just kind of cut them V-grooves out a little bit. And then I just take my Scotch-Brite and just kind of shove it down in there and rub it. Same thing as down in here. And these T-slots here, what I'll take is, I'll take this coarse Scotch-Brite and stick it in there like that, kind of double it, and then shove it down in there, and it kind of conforms to the T-slot shape. And just go in there and just rub it. And you know, it did a pretty good job cleaning them out. So you can see the side, you know, I've still got a lot to do on it, but man, the top's looking great, looking beautiful. Let me grab a chuck jaw that I cleaned up. I still have only polished the one jaw, which is this one right here. And it's looking pretty good. There's one that's not polished to give it a little bit of comparison. It's got a nice smooth finish on it. Alright, so man, I'm just going to keep on going with it. I want to go ahead and start polishing on the outside and the back of this and just try to get everything cleaned up. This face right here, you know, it pulls up against your spindle on the machine. It's going to pull up on the center bore here. This is a taper. It pulls up there and against this face. And I want to make sure I get it really good and clean and polished. So I think what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove these studs. And I'm going to show you how these studs come out and how they're used. You know, once we get all this cleaned up, and we'll put it back together, and then we'll put it on the machine and we'll kind of show it. But you have another pin in the spindle that lines up with this notch here, and it rotates. And as it's rotating, it's actually drawing this back. It pulls the pins back and pulls the chuck against the face of the spindle there. And that's what locks it. That's why they call it a cam lock there. So, and they're adjustable too. And they all have a little groove machined on them. And that kind of gives, that's a guideline on as in how far to screw these things in there. So let's go ahead and take one out. I believe it's 7/32. Yeah. So the cap head bolt is just to retain them. You see that there's a little milled notch on every one of these, and that's for the head of the cap head bolt here. So we'll just go ahead and remove the bolt. All right, just a cap head bolt. And then these should just unscrew by hand. All right, there's your stud right there. So you see the notch. That's for the cap head bolt to sit in to keep this from moving. But so they don't lock in there. They're not tight. They're made adjustable. So there's the groove there that I'm talking about. Whenever you screw it in, you line up the face of the chuck even with this. And then whenever you actually put it on the machine, you're gonna tighten it. And if the cam is turning too far one direction, tightening, you know, if it's going too far, then you have to adjust this in or out to compensate for it. Sometimes you're hitting too close and you can't get a good pull on it, and sometimes it goes too far, so you have to adjust it in or out by like one thread. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove the rest of them. It's the same process. Just remove the cap head bolt, and then just simply unscrew the stud. There we have all the studs removed, and you see this stuff right here? That's dirt. So somebody's had this thing outside in the dirt, man. That's the only place that I see it. I didn't see dirt on any other part of the chuck, but it looks like somebody might have laid this over in some dirt on the back side and it got up in here where the studs are. But there's no damage or anything like that. I just kind of find that funny, you know, that there's actual dirt on this thing. but we'll get all that cleaned and blowed off. So, all right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. One other thing I wanted to point out, these holes that are drilled in this chuck, these serve a couple purposes. One is that whenever you're indicating, and this is something that people don't really think about, whenever you're indicating on a 4-jaw, if you'll notice my left hand's always grabbing this chuck and spinning it. It's not up here like this. It's very rare is it just sitting on the outside. It's grabbing it on the back side. I'm grabbing it in these holes right here. And some chucks are casted, where you have a casted slot in there with ribs, and that gives you a place to grab onto and spin this as you're indicating. The other purpose of this is so that it's not so massive. You know, you're removing some of this metal and reducing the weight of it. So that's what my opinion of those drilled holes in these chucks are. But that's all it is. It's just a drilled hole. It's got the rough edges in there from a drill bit, and it's got the point down there. It looks like a 118-degree point for a standard drill.